I'm going to be totally different probably to everybody else that's here today because I am not particularly scientific, okay, but I am very much about trying to understand the science and then relay that as practically as I can on farm. And so what I'm hoping to give you today is what I find when I'm going on farm in terms of things that I look for and things that I'm trying to achieve, and the reasons why I use products like Isotherm. So when we go on farm, you know, Zinpro originally brought Isotherm to me and said, look, this is a product that you might be interested in. And from a point of view of transition cows, when you think about it, you know, fundamentally, we've got so much fibre in that diet, then something that helps us get a better digestibility of that has got to be really, really the right thing. So if we're in the situation that we've got a product that can help us get better digestion that way, then it also then drives everything that we put into the rumen to be digested in a better way. And if we think about it, fundamentally, what have we got in front of us? We've got the best, most efficient thing in the world in terms of digesting fibre normally, as long as we promote it correctly. And so therefore, this isn't an excuse for poor nutrition. It's about making better nutrition, yes? So it's about making that rumen perform how you want it to perform. And so for me, I kind of really found that was a very important thing that I wanted to try and achieve with my farmers. But of course, one of the things you're going to come across is financial pressure in how much it costs to put the product on farm. So as far as I'm concerned, it's about trying to break it down into a far more workable amount of money for a farmer to deal with. So when I found I was talking to my farmers and saying, okay, it's 30p a cow a day, they start to think, wow, that sounds big numbers, you know. But if you break it down and you go, okay, it's more like, more in the region of, say, £3 for every 10 days that they're in transition, then that means that if she's in there for 60 days, it's £18. Well, a lot of these guys were prepared to spend £35 on a Keckstone bolus. Okay? So if you've got that product that can give you probably as much as a Keckstone bolus was giving you and all the other advantages as well, then why would you not want to use that product? And so from that point of view, I found it really useful to be in a situation that I could use that product to take me forward and set that cow up right for lactation. So when we were doing this, what we tend to find, and what I find really most important about this, because I'm a cow enthusiast, is that they are fundamentally immense cows. Yeah? So when I go and see those cows, what's really important to me is I love the fact that they are brimful, you know, they look great. They are just in that situation that you think, right, these cows are ready to hit the road running. So we push that from that point of view, and what you do tend to find is that you get that result that goes on from there. So one of the things that really comes from that as well, from transition with this product like that, is that you end up with really clean transition cow data. So as an example, I can tell you, we were looking at some figures. It's a 700 cow herd. And basically, our post-calving transition disease is like literally 0. And then all of a sudden, we started getting some spikes up of cows disappearing out of the system within the first 60 days of lactation. So, okay, what is that that's created that situation? Well, what it was we were fundamentally calving more cows at that point in time than we normally did. So a decision was made by the farm to not bring heifers into the group as soon as they normally would. And so instead of on average those heifers going into that transition group at 28 days prior to calving, they were going in on average 18 days. So, but because the data was so clean on our transition disease, it then really showed up that we could go, okay, we can really spotlight what is going on here. And it meant that the management decisions on that farm were way, way easier to achieve. So yeah, it brings us these opportunities to just be better at what we're doing. And we know full well, don't we, that when we're doing nutrition on farm, that there are a lot of things going on that give us inaccuracies. Dry matter intake is a huge one. we're talking about forage analysis and we're talking about looking at analysis in general, it is quite frustrating from a hands-on point of view as a nutritionist that what we find is that, you know, a lot of those dry matter figures are incorrect. I run dryers and I dry samples quite a lot on farm, and the fundamentals of doing nutrition revolve around understanding dry matter intake. Well, if you're in that sort of situation where those dry matter intakes are out of kilter, it becomes very difficult to understand where you're at. But if you get your head around those, then you start to see the benefits of driving isoacids in terms of how you get those dry matter intakes increasing, improving, and you get a better cow off the back of it. So if you look forward as well, so we've talked mainly about transition there from my point of view, but then that also led me into looking and thinking, okay, you know, where do we go with it in terms of in lactation? And obviously Zinpro originally were talking to us a lot about feeding it in lactation. And as a nutritionist, trying to get that cost base onto farm is obviously quite a daunting factor sometimes. So essentially, I looked at it and went, okay, from my point of view, what are the animals that are getting the most difficulty on farm in lactation? So I looked at it and I thought, okay, I'll go with heifers first, all right? Because I felt potentially I'd get the biggest bang for my buck from doing that. Well, what I can tell you is that from a hands-on point of view, is if those heifers aren't that well grown before they come into lactation, you won't see a milk performance difference. You will see a growth rate difference, and you will generally see a performance in second lactation improvement, but you don't tend to see a difference in that first lactation. Now, if you're in that situation where those heifers are well grown when they come in, and you've got that basis correct, then you will tend to see far more opportunity of milk performance as well. And like I say, I'm not putting science to this, but what I'm trying to tell you is what I see on farm from using the product. And likewise, in lactation, we did an interesting one. It's just a complete farm observation. We've got a farm where we essentially have 3 groups of milking cows on that farm. And what happens is, as we dry off out of each group, we calve back into that group. So fundamentally, each group is very similar days in milk. So I said to the farmer, okay, why don't we just run the isotherm into one of those groups and not the other 2, and we'll see if there's a difference from a hands-on point of view. Okay, so we did it, and 6 weeks later we reviewed the data. So the group that was taking the isotherm was making about a kg more milk than the other 2 groups. So you might go, okay, that's not enough to be significant. All right? But then when we did the data on how much they were consuming as a group, they were eating 7.5% less than the other 2 groups. Okay, it was just a phenomenal difference. And that was it's not a trial, but it was a hands-on farm observation. And so it was really dynamic to me, because at that point in time, if you do the maths back on that, that was a 4-to-1 return. And when you're trying to justify products on farm as a nutritionist, you know yourselves, most of the time, I'm quite happy if I get a 2-to-1 return on farm. But if I can get a 4-to-1 return, I'm just ecstatic. So it's a little bit different, but from my point of view, that's how I tend to look at things, is how I'm going to try and get those results on farm. But most of all, I'm really, because I'm a cow enthusiast, and I love good cows, you know, I just believe that it gives me a truly great cow. And when you look at it, and the discussion's been about obviously laying down muscle, I'm truly convinced that we see that from a hands-on perspective, not just from the science point of view, because even when we're increasing yield on these units where we've got isotherm in there, we're improving preg rate nearly every time as well, or we're certainly seeing a difference. And so that's a really positive thing from a nutritional point of view. When you're advocating these products onto farm, you need to feel like you're getting confidence in the results. So yeah, I'm truly behind the product. I think it's really makes a difference. And it, from my point of view, passionate about it as well. And there's a recent line from somebody from a famous politician where he said, we really shouldn't be thinking about nostalgic politics anymore. And I think we shouldn't be thinking about nostalgic nutrition. We need to be grasping innovation and looking forward and thinking, okay, how can we do what we're doing better? And one of the ways we can do that is to use a product like Isotherm and promote isoacids in the diet.